Thank you for being here. This is such a delight, such an honor. The point of this show really is to just capture what we can in an hour of your wisdom and your story and your path to help anyone listening find themselves seen in this journey, which has so many highs and so many lows. And you're obviously on a huge high right now, but can often feel so lonely and is so hard in such a volatile industry. And we've come off of a couple of years of a lot of hardships. So I think the joy that this film is bringing tons of people, and even in the industry, just this reconnection, I think, with what the magic of movies, and what they mean to so many of us that grew up going to the theater and having these visceral experiences. I'm just excited that this film exists for this younger generation who gets to have that same feeling that I think we had. So thank you for being here. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you if anyone has greeted you yet with the famous Elphaba Glinda hand to the, has that? Okay.
No, just my daughter does that all the time to me.
So this is basically an exclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We got Alex Brooks to do this. Perfect.
The choreographer is going to be so upset that I didn't do it properly.
Oh my God. We can do it properly. What is am I doing it? Is it?
I'm terrible at it. I think you're pretty good.
Okay. We're good. So I'd love to just talk a little bit, your beginnings, just a quick sort of overarching. I've done a lot of the research, so I know the story of how you got started and found cinematography, but walk us through that into the moment you get to step on set for Wicked and what this project means to you.
I grew up in New York City, and my dad was a playwright and my mom was a singer and a dancer, and we lived in a little tenement apartment building in New York with the bathtub in the kitchen, 300 square feet, and I have a little sister, and we didn't have much money, but there was love and art and artists coming through our house all the time, and just wonderful exposure to artists and craftspeople and what it means to be a storyteller. And when I was 5, I became a child actor to help my parents out financially. And when I was 10, we moved from New York to Los Angeles, and my sister's career was taking off. And I'd sit in dark sound stages after school, and I was supposed to be doing my homework, but I would be watching the lighting guys, and I was mesmerized, and I knew there was something special. And one by one, the lights would come on in a dark sound stage. And it actually makes me think of, I'm going to diverge my story. It makes me think of actually people going to the movies again, because we started Wicked during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. We started prepping during the pandemic. And Jon Chu kept asking us to dream bigger than we had ever dreamed before. And we didn't know if people would ever be going back to the movies. Movie theaters were closed when he called me and told me if we were going to do Wicked next. And then to now, 4 years later, go to a dark movie theater and feel the lights start to come up as the Universal logo comes up. It reminds me of that magic when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, when I was on a dark soundstage and the lights would start to come up. And so I fell in love with lighting. And when I was 15, I told my mom I wanted to be a cinematographer. And she said, I know. And we were on the beach in Santa Monica, and I looked down and there was this little gray and white feather, which I picked up and I still have in a broken frame, and it feels like the Elphaba broken glass throughout Wicked. There's so much broken glass in Wicked, and Elphaba's this triangle and all these circles, and so glass is this theme, and I have this feather that looks like Elphaba, that reminds me of Elphaba, or the monkey feathers, just so much similar symbolism, and it's in my broken frame, which I will never take out of my broken frame. And my mom helped me figure out what I could do. I started doing still photography in high school, and I lived in the darkroom, and then I applied to USC for film school and met Jon Chu there, and we bonded over our love of musicals.
Yeah.
So that's the fastest version of
very
that
fast,
story.
very good. And then so by the time you graduate, what year are we roughly in?
So we were making Jon's short in 2002. So May 2002 was when we shot his short film, which was a musical called When the Kids Are Away.
And so at that time, you then full of dreams, and now obviously a ton of experience in terms of the schooling that you were able to do, you head into Hollywood to go become a cinematographer. What are those initial first years like for you?
You get out of film school. First, when you get into film school, or when I got into film school, I was like, this is the best. Everything's set for life for me. And you go through film school and you're meeting all these cool people, and you're finding people that you don't realize you're going to know for the rest of your life and work with for the rest of your life. But you start to form these relationships there. And then you get out of school, and some of those people get ahead very fast, and other people don't, or other people choose a path that is a little bit easier, but maybe not necessarily what their dream was when they went into film school. And some people go on a completely different path and go to law school or nursing school or go, you know what, I want to be a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad. And you leave each other for a period of time. And that happened with Jon and me. He suddenly was on the cover of Hollywood Reporter at the age of 22 with this huge, he was going to make a musical for Sony, but it never got made in the end. And a few years later, I was at the Obama inauguration and Obama's first inauguration, standing in 22-degree weather. And I see Jon's calling me on my phone. I had a flip phone then even. And I answer it. And he's like, look, I've got this idea for this superhero web series where the superheroes, their powers are dance moves. And we're all going to make $100 a day. And can you be in LA tomorrow? And I was like, yes. I lived on the East Coast at the time. I had moved to Maine. And I called my friend. I said, can I crash on your couch for a while? And for 3 years, I ended up crashing on her couch while we made this little teeny show. It ended up being Hulu's first original content, but it became this playground for how to tell a story through dance and music. And we started working with our choreographer, Chris Scott. And that period of time really bonded the three of us.
Yeah. And so the early days, you talked about the different paths people were taking. Which path would you say you chose?
So I chose the path of I'm going to wait tables and shoot as much as I can, often for free, and meet filmmakers and storytellers and learn on the job. And I just shot as much as I possibly could. And that was my path.
At what point did you feel like, which project would you say at the time felt for you, okay, this is the shift where you're now heading more into the direction of what maybe when you started aspirationally, usually it takes about 10 years for most of us to be like, this is the thing I thought I'd be doing year one. And it takes minimum 10 years. Is there a project or a period of time, maybe not a specific project that you were like, yes, this is the path?
So shortly after The Legion of Extraordinary Dancers, Jon got this Blumhouse movie, and it was a $5 million movie. And this is in between him doing major movies like G.I. Joe and Now You See Me. And we did Gem and the Holograms for Blumhouse. And it was my first union movie. And every single dollar I made on that movie went to paying to get into the union. And it was another job that I slept on my friend's couch. And actually, no, it wasn't a couch. She had a studio apartment and had just moved in with her boyfriend. So I got—
Is this the same friend?
This is a different friend.
Okay.
I have two amazing friends, Heidi and Candace, and they definitely were like, helped me out for so many years. It was, they always believed in me. They still believe in me. I love them.
Well, the theme of sisterhood obviously is a huge one, and we'll get to that. But I love that there's like fabrics of that in the origin of your story, in this really cool way.
Yeah. I actually look at the women in my life and the women in my life right now too, who I really could not be doing what I'm doing without them. It is a network of women who are amazing and supportive and all different generations. And I am so grateful to each one of them.
Yeah. Okay. So Gem and the Holograms, that's the moment where you're like, okay.
I mean, it was a moment where I remember I have the picture. I was standing at Panavision Hollywood, and it was like the first time I had a massively huge camera truck, or at least what I thought was a massively huge camera truck. I didn't realize
how big they could go. Yeah.
Or how many you actually can have.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how many we had on Wicked, but there were a lot of camera trucks.
Yeah.
And it was a movie that not a lot of people saw, but I'm very proud of it. We're all proud of it. It's a beautiful movie. And so that felt like that was a shift in terms of getting my union card and feeling like, okay, I am a professional in a different way.
Yeah. And then navigating the ups and downs of the industry, because right now, obviously, we're catching you in a very big high of your career and the beginning of it, the ascension, in my humble opinion. But there's a lot of downsides and downturns that go into these upswings that we experience if we're lucky. How have you navigated that? Like when you've had these moments of challenge or frustration or things maybe not happening that you thought should or wanted to, what has kept you going?
I can think of a few key moments where I just wanted to give up, and it is not easy, and I don't know if it ever gets easy, but when you are in those lows, the lows feel like you'll never come up from them, and when you're in your highs, you think you're never going to come down from those highs. Yeah. But really and truly, life happens somewhere in between, and so trying to find balance between those highs and those lows, and even just finding a routine has been really helpful to me. And I find when I get out of that routine, those are the days that are hardest. And then just having the support, like having the people who you can call when things are not great. And even when you're in your highs, like you can have some very low lows in the middle of those highs as well. Life is not perfect suddenly. And you have real life to deal with too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's why for me, I'm so passionate about this podcast and the kinds of conversations we get to have, because it's absolutely, we must celebrate these highs because we know how much work it is required to get those moments of your career where you are being celebrated externally in these ways.
Yeah.
But that is such a small percentage of the time, of the reality of the lifestyle of this industry, of the work that we do, that if you're a person who's chasing that, or you think that's what this is, then you're in for a real rude awakening because of the resilience and the tenacity you have to have, especially with this industry, which continues to be volatile and is constantly changing and evolving. You just have to be really malleable to be able to sustain and survive and then thrive on top of that, which obviously you are doing, have been doing. But I think it's always good for people to hear the ways that you have navigated those downs, and that unlike maybe some others who got a first big studio movie off of film school, that there were still years of like
this
doing
has
all
been
the
a
things.
30-year journey to get to this moment. But I think it's the in-between moments that are the hardest, and the being okay with not knowing what's next, and also just being happy in my own life. Like I have the most wonderful husband and daughter, and every morning I write a gratitude list, and I've been doing it. I was trying to remember how long I've been doing it, but I think it was the summer I actually met my husband, so it would have been 2008. So I started keeping a gratitude journal, and I write 10 things every morning, and I try to mix it up and make sure I'm not just writing the same thing every day. But the reality is, knowing I get to go home to my little girl and read stories. And we've been apart a lot the last few months, and they've been great about trying to be with me as much as possible. But she has a life, my husband has a life. But just knowing in 10 days, I will be at home reading in bed. Like our favorite thing to do is we each get our book and we lay in bed for a couple of hours and just read. And it is my happy place.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I think skipping ahead a little bit, but with your daughter, I know that she got to be on set with you and have this amazing experience. And she was 6 and now she's 9. I'm just trying to think about, when we think about the impact of story on this new generation, right? And there's all this fear of like, oh, these kids won't be able to sit still and TikTok is melting everyone's brains. But I think about her getting to have this experience of being immersed in like literally the most magical fairy tale place one could imagine, but then looking around and seeing that her mom is responsible for helping create this magic for her, but for so many. And I love that you were saying how you got to use her for some of your lighting setups and so you have these beautiful archives of photos that she now gets to have of this moment in her life. And I'm jealous that she's gotten to have this experience. But I think more importantly, for her to see you in action in the ways that she must have seen, and then see so many women and feel sisterhood and collaboration and teamwork in that way, like the imprint that must have had on her. I'm just so excited to see like how that shapes her as an adult,
I'm excited to see how it shapes her too. My mom didn't work, and she filled our house with love, but I can also see like when we left the house, when we grew up, it was really hard on her because she didn't know what to do next. Yeah. We were her identity, and we're still her identity. But who knows, maybe my daughter's going to grow up and go, my mom was working way too hard all the time. You can't win. But she did. She had Wicked is her movie. She feels complete ownership of it. Yeah. She did. She grew up on the weekends. She would come every weekend and we'd light, because I would pre-light on the weekends. And I've got pictures of her running around on the yellow brick road in Munchkinland, or on the yellow brick road in a forest, or in Emerald City. And I did a whole One Short Day, which is a musical number. Yeah. So I did a whole One Short Day photo shoot with her one day in Emerald City. And I've been waiting for the movie to come out to like actually print the pictures into a book for her so she can have her own One Short Day book. Last spring, we lived in LA for 3 months while I'm working on another movie. And we pulled her out of school and homeschooled her for 3 months. And we'd go to visual effects reviews for Wicked. And so she was there when they were designing the monkeys. And so John Chu and Pablo Hellman, our visual effects supervisor, would ask her opinion. So she 100% truly believes she's
a consultant.
designed those
Yeah,
flying
she consulted
monkeys.
on the film,
yes.
for sure.
And it's interesting because I don't hide when I'm upset or sad about my career from her. I let her see that there are challenges. And I don't remember what the circumstance was, but I didn't want to leave her. And she looked at me and she said, "Mommy, but you have to go." And I was like, I could stay home. And she's like, "No, you have to go." She's like, "This is your movie and you've worked really hard for it. And I'll be here when you get back." And of course, then I just cried harder.
Of course.
And then, but she was 100% right.
Yeah.
And she is incredibly supportive of me. And she is proud of me and proud of this movie. And so I think we'll see how she changes, but I'm interested to see also who she develops into.
Yeah. As I read, she loves costume designing and is going to be doing some Barbie costumes, vintage perhaps.
Yes, she loves fabrics. She loves costume designing. Paul Tazwell said she can come work with him, but she also wants to be a math teacher and the president of the United States.
She can be all three at different times in her life. Why not? You mentioned, though, on this film that you decided to embrace being a woman in the Marie Claire interview, and that bringing her to set, you were able to find your inner power through this experience. What was it about this experience that made you feel so empowered? And what does that power look like and feel like?
I can remember the moment where I felt it. And I don't remember what month it was, but it must have been February or March. So we were in an 8.5-month shoot, not quite halfway through. It was definitely not halfway through because we moved to Munchkin Land about halfway through our shoot. And I was on the soundstage. It was a day she didn't come to pre-light. But pre-light for me on the weekends is like my sacred space. On a normal work day, there's hundreds and hundreds of people around. It's loud. And there's just like a lot of time pressure. And on the weekends for pre-light, it's me and the gaffer and the electricians. And it's just a small community of just wonderful people. And it's very quiet. And you're in these huge cavernous sets that were built by our amazing production designer, Nathan Crowley. And I was on the set of the lower attic, which is where Defying Gravity starts. And I usually read the script while I'm there and sometimes walk through the space and try to think of ideas for where camera can be. And we're lighting the set, so the lighting. And I remember standing there. And I stand there and I try to be Cynthia Erivo being Elphaba or Ariana Grande being Glinda. And that can help inform how I'm going to light a space or how the camera should move. And I remember standing in the middle of the room, looking at the lyrics. Something has changed within me. Something is not the same. I'm through with playing by the rules of someone else's game. No time for second guessing, no time to go back to sleep, just time to trust my instincts, close my eyes, and leap. And in that moment, I realized it was all instinct, and it was my moment to close my eyes and step into whoever I was supposed to become.
Wow. And then to have that be able to be followed through so genuinely and authentically, and again, have that imprint into something that is now touching so many people, so many women, so many young women. I just can't even imagine what that must feel like.
You know, we all get to tell the story through different lenses, and I get to be the female lens through which this movie has been told and how it's viewed. And I get to bring all of that to this story of female friendship. And it was an incredible privilege, and I'm so grateful to Jon for trusting me in this process.
Yeah. You've partnered with Jon on numerous projects over these past 15 years. What do you think is the key to a successful director-cinematographer relationship?
That's a tricky question because we're just sort of like us on set. And I remember there was one day on Emerald City set, we're like sitting in the middle of the biggest set we have ever shot on in our lives, and probably the biggest set we will ever shoot on in our lives. And it's me and Chris Scott and Jon, and we're all like huddled together. And Jon looks at us. He's like, "It's just like when we were on LXD." He's like, "Nothing's changed." And it is. It's these three friends making a movie. And then we also have Myron Kirstein, who is the editor, and it's the four of us. And we like get to be in the trenches together and support each other, and we can disagree with each other and bring ideas to each other. And we always are listening to each other's ideas. And Jon is the director, and it is his movie, and we're there to support his vision. But he also like totally respects us and listens to us and trusts us. And when we say something, he knows it's for a reason. And sometimes he goes, no, and no means no. And sometimes he says no, and then an hour later, like he's processed it and comes back and goes, actually, that was a great idea, and let's do that instead. And I think just knowing that you are in the center of this massively huge project, but you're doing it with 4 people who know each other so well and who are really and truly have the incredible love of storytelling and characters and being completely immersed in a world. And we know we are lucky that we found each other.
Yeah. The thing that I find fascinating is that the shorthand you have with someone that you've collaborated on and off for years, especially when you start out in the humble beginnings, you sort of meet each other where you're at in those initial days before anybody is anybody. Those relationships really, if you can deepen those networks throughout the years and continue to water those seeds into whatever they become and how they blossom, those collaborations seem to yield, I think, the most, regardless of the end result of the film, but the most rewarding experiences. Because I think our responsibility when we're on set is the journey that we get to take our crew on, and everybody who's staying away from home and family and working those crazy hours and being a part of our circus to bring the story to life. And so to create a space where everyone can step in and be collaborative and be supported and be heard starts from the top, as we know. And so I think that's so important, because so many people come to me and they look for this relationship, this collaboration, but it takes years to harvest that. It doesn't just come from a one-off. But once you find that, it's really hard to like go and veer away from that, which is why you see some of the giants of our industry have been shooting with the same people, editing with the same people forever.
Yeah. I mean, movies are hard. They are really hard to make. And then you release them out into the world, and you have no clue what the world is going to be like when you release them, and you have no clue how they're going to be received. And it is your art, and there are things you are so proud of, and you have worked so many hours on, committed so many years of your life to a project, and sacrificed certain things for, and chosen certain things instead of other things so that you could do these projects. So I think having the collaborators that you go, okay, together as a group, we can be resilient. Or like Elphaba says to Glinda, together we can do anything.
Yeah. Because this is such a female-specific story about female friendship, and you having a female lens is massively important. Do you find that as a woman, how has that life experience really shaped your lens as a cinematographer and what you bring to the table in this moment where there's few cinematographers who've ever been nominated for an Oscar? And we met at the ASC, for example, and there's 20-some women who are members, we were saying, and you had mentioned
women. I was the 20th woman who had gotten into the ASC, and I think there's around 450 members. And so you're talking about 425 men and 25 women. It's not just women, it's people of all diversities, right? We all see the world differently, and it's so limiting to only see the world through one viewfinder. The more we can diversify the industry and the more stories we can tell, the more interesting our world's going to become, and the more interesting the movies are going to be. And like part of this journey for me, right, like I chose not to be an actor because I hate being in front of the camera, and yet I'm sitting here with you. And I didn't realize, and not just you, but like lots of these kind of interviews where I have to be in front of the camera, and it's like the last place I want to be. I love making movies, but meeting people who, through this journey, who come up to me or message me or text me or stop me on the street and go, I'm so inspired by you, or I know if you could do it, I can do it too. And it's not just women, it's people who are underrepresented in this industry that are seeing themselves in me. And we all need role models and people we can look up to. And I have my role models. I have the women who have inspired me, Ellen Kuras and Nancy Schreiber and Mandy Walker and Rachel Morrison. These are all women who I go, okay, they have forged a path. They have figured it out. And I've lived in the face of no my entire life. So the more role models we can give to people who don't feel like they are represented in the film industry.
Yeah. What do you think then it is, or is that what you think it is, that so many people have been responding to the film in such a visceral way? Younger people, is that what you think it is that is really like connecting with people in this crazy way, where there's obviously fans of the show because it's been around forever, but there's a lot of people that I know, for example, who've never seen the show and didn't know anything about it and went to see it and now have seen it 3 times. It's like this, I don't know, there's something about it that is connecting with people in this really real way. What do you think that is?
I think that's the power of cinema, right? If you can make a movie where a 6-year-old and a 85-year-old grandparent or great-grandparent can sit in a dark movie theater in the cinema and both come out and have felt something. That's the power of movies. A movie isn't made for one specific demographic. It is made for human beings. And so you can have someone in Africa or in Asia or in, a small town in Austria watching the movie. I mean, I live in a small state and people will keep writing me, and that's the power of storytelling. It's when a movie can move anyone and you identify with different parts of it. I always think there's people who identify with Elphaba. You can be an Elphaba or you can be a Glinda. And I saw it, my electricians were Glindas and the grips were Elphaba all the way. And you might not identify with either one of them. Maybe you identify with the wizard. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
But or maybe you identify with Chisteri, the flying monkey. There is something in this movie for everyone. And someone said to me, one of the best things they've said was like, there are 28 different movies inside this movie. And I think it just gives this broad place to resonate. But it also is just like this very handmade movie for something that is such a massively huge movie.
Yeah.
So that handmade quality, I think, also is touchable. Jon did. He said over and over again to us, I want this movie to be touchable.
Yeah.
And that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it is the movie magic too, is I think you guys could have gone VFX for a lot of things and you chose to do so much practically, so much choreography. I read that you really fought for your Steadicam op to really be a part of all of your prep so they could be a part of the choreography and the rehearsals, because the camera is a character in the story and it has to move with the actors and the dancing and the fluidity of everything that you're doing. And I commend you for that because I'm sure it wasn't easy. But also like just the idea of teamwork, right? Like every film is so hard, whether you're doing a small indie or the largest thing you've ever done. Can you speak to some of the unique challenges that you had on this film and how the teamwork helped you navigate some of those challenges? Because I want to say I read that I was like blown away by the technical magnitude of this film. And just again, from a producer perspective, it's mind-boggling to me just to even see like an overhead. I think it was like your sound mixer who shared an overhead and talked about the challenges of recording live audio and having to consider all the generators and where you were going to place them, and this insane thing you don't think about when you're immersed, but the practical aspects of it, the recording the audio live like that. Anyway, just like a lot of questions, but like in one, but just the technical achievement of what you guys were able to do beyond the world itself that you created alone, I think is like deserves all the awards and all the conversations to dissect, like in today's day and age where you could have gone perhaps a more, I don't know, technical way with what technology has given us. Yeah. The fact that you were still able to do so much of it practically, I think is what makes that magic feel truly mesmerizing, especially to younger people, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we did. We wanted to make an old Hollywood movie. And I talk about me and Jon and Myron and Chris being like part of Jon's team, but I had a team of people that fully supported me too. And when you make a movie, you have to trust those people. And part of my prep process was bringing Karsten Jakobsen on, our Steadicam operator, on really early. I'd never worked with him before. And then David Smith, the gaffer, and I had never worked together either. And he walked into my office on the first day and said, we need to go straight to the art department. This movie is bigger than anything anyone understands it to be. And we started going through all the sets. And I don't even think we said hello. There was no, there probably was because he's British and very proper as well. But
Straight to
it was
business.
straight to business.
Yeah.
And then I started Movie Club with them and our key grip and Marin, who helped me. She did a lot of research and development stuff for me.
Yeah.
And I guess that's 5 of us would have Movie Club on Wednesday afternoons. And to me, I wanted to know these people as artists and storytellers and not just technicians, or I wanted to know them. I'm about to go spend 155
they're your
shooting
collaborators,
days.
is what I say. You have this title, a job title, but everyone who ends up in whatever place within the ecosystem fell in love with story and with movies at some point in their lives. And that essence needs to be respected and brought into the creative conversation.
Yeah. So we got to just, we watched movies that had absolutely nothing to do with Wicked, but then we'd start to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and start to understand each other on a truly, purely artistic level. And I think that made all the difference in the world, because then suddenly flash forward to day 75 and you're standing knee deep in mud because you're in a very wet farmland where your sets are being built and your huge construction cranes that are holding lights are sinking into the ground and it starts to hail and you're shooting outside and the crane cable breaks. And just when everything's falling apart, you've got each other and you go, okay, how are we going to make this work? And with Guy Micheletti, our key grip, Karsten Jakobsen, and Simon Finney, our camera operators, and Lewis and Sasha, our camera assistants, and David Smith and the gaffer and Daniel Bocking, who was our dimmer board op. With that group of people, I felt so incredibly supported, and I knew we could absolutely do anything. And that trust when you're in this massively huge world of these movies was really important for me too.
How do you, though, push the envelope, right? When you have this kind of stage, literally probably the largest budget you've ever worked on or anyone, every filmmaker likes to want more time or money. You never have enough, no matter how big your show is. And even with this, you could say you probably had all the toys in the world, but I'm sure there were still things you wish you could have had. But how do you push the envelope when you're already given so many tools in comparison to perhaps other experiences without losing control and going completely like haywire?
So this movie is actually about restraint, because we could do absolutely anything. We could have any of the toys we wanted. We could fly the camera any which way we wanted. We could do massively huge moves, but it's actually in the quiet moments. Jon talks about this a lot. It is a musical that has huge amounts of silence. And it's not just silence of the audio, but it's silence of the camera where we pause and we don't move the camera, or you linger on a shot for a very long time. And we do these big sweeping crane moves, but they often end in just very slow or completely static shots. Or we do these 360-degree shots, and there are moments where the camera just stops and doesn't move. Yeah. And those are the moments that make people lean in and feel connected. And it's Elphaba and Glinda in these static shots where they're looking right into the lens at each other. And so it's pushing the envelope actually the opposite way, which is, okay, we're here, we can do whatever we want to do in many ways, but let's make sure we're telling the story, and the story happens, the connection between these two women happen in the quietness.
Did you already enter your prep process with that idea of constraint and restraint in mind, or did it take you a while to find it? Did you get lost in how massive it could be if you can do anything, or did you already have a way to narrow down that focus?
I think first, I've been on the movie almost 4 years, and I think at first it's, no, let's dream as big as possible, and then you find that rhythm of, okay, just because we can move the camera, does that mean we should? And that's where Jon and I work really well together, because we talk about emotion. We break down a script emotionally about humanity and themes, and all of those give us a roadmap for where we want to be and where we should be. And so when you're suddenly rushing or have only a few hours left, or something deviates your day in some way, you're able to look at those emotional targets and understand where you should be. And for me, I feel like part of my job is to be the space to make sure those emotions are being tracked and to remind Jon, oh, hands are such an important theme here. And even though we don't have time to get the shot of the hands, let's do it anyway, because this is something really important. And just finding those little moments, the little details, keeps you focused and not lost in the big picture, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And was there one of the biggest challenges? Like, there's so many problems to solve on a show of this scale. I'm sure you can speak to many, but is there one that's like the juiciest for you personally?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. Every day. This
Every
is the
day.
hardest job I've ever worked on
Yeah.
in my life. And Jon says the same thing. It was very hard. And what we had to keep reminding ourselves is it's hard, but we're making a special movie. And we all knew that. On day 50, the editor, Myron, cut together just a sizzle reel of shots that we had done in the first 50 days. And he started inviting people into the editing room to watch them. And it just reinvigorated people because they go, oh, because everyone's doing their job. The model maker's making their model. The wig people are making sure you don't see the hair lace. The costumers are making sure every single bit of the costume's properly tucked. And the electricians are making sure every light is in the right place. We all are like so micro-focused. And Myron then was able to cut this together and go, okay, but this is the big picture.
Yeah.
Let's keep celebrating and enjoying and forging forward.
What was it that made it so hard? Was it the scope, the responsibility, which all of it is always hard?
You look at 155 shooting days and you go, oh my God, that's a lot. But you're making 2 movies in that period of time on massively huge sets that like just to walk from one site to the other can take 10 minutes.
Wow.
So
that's crazy. It's the scope.
It's the reality of not just shooting on a blue screen stage, but actually having these huge environments to shoot in. And we literally lived in Oz for 8.5 months. Wow. And so then every day was a challenge. It was.
Did you guys break the shooting schedule? Was it really part 1, part 2 separate, or were you just?
We could be shooting scene 103, and then the next day we could be doing movie 2, scene 2. And sometimes even 2 scenes on the same day. We had Jeff Goldblum for a very limited period of time, and he's in both movies. All the rest of our cast we had the whole time, but we had him for a very limited time. And so you're shooting out stages, sets, because they need to turn them over into, we had 17 sound stages. That's not 17 sets. Some of those sound stages got turned around into other sets. So you're constantly going back to the same sound stage over and over again. But everything's...
The logistical, like I said, the technical logistical feat of that is the scope. Like, it's just inconceivable to me because most of my career I've worked in these small budget films in comparison, and it's just like that can be overwhelming in and of itself. So to even wrap my brain around what you're saying is like, I'm overwhelmed for you.
Yeah.
And every producer and everybody who had to, be a part of it. I'm sure you guys were like 500 deep minimum people, just to bodies, just to make that machine work.
Yes.
So kudos. A couple of things a little more like nerdy about camera choices and some of the things that I thought were really interesting. The tulip farm fields, like that was practical. You guys planted all of those, but even the way you shot that is so beautiful. And I know that the weather in the UK can be so unreliable. Yeah. So to get that shot, so that consistency, I don't even know how you guys went about doing that, but it's just more of a kudos that you were able to make that happen because it sets the tone, obviously, in that opening.
Yeah, the tulip farm was... When we first started scouting London or the UK, we had these dreams about, let's go on location to these different fields. And we saw a barley field and we saw these different flower fields. And we're like, okay, next summer at this time, we'll be shooting in these fields. But the reality is we were such a massive production. Actually, logistically doing that was impossible. But the tulip field became a reality. And that was 9 million tulips were planted and colors were carefully selected. And then the sunlight needed to match up with Munchkin Land. And we shot Munchkin Land on our backlot, but it's 2 stitched together shots where you see the fields that we planted and then another drone shot matching going into Munchkin Land. So, but we needed the sun to line up perfectly. And so we went into the program called the Unreal Engine and we figured out how we should have the tulips planted so that the sun would be in the right place for the shots that were planned. And this is 9 months before. You have to plant tulips. I think we picked the bulbs in August and they went in the ground in September and they bloomed in April. I don't know how many months that is, but it's a long time. That. So all the early planning of that among lots and lots of people had to happen really early. And then needing to make sure the sun was going to be having a sunny day for when the kids are running through the tulip fields was really important. We had lights to light Munchkin Land, but the fields, that was real sunlight. And what else happened? The tulips bloomed early as well. So the tulip farmer had to plant the bulbs in a way in an orientation he doesn't usually plant them, but he planted them just for us for this movie. And then it's crazy to think about like how many people had to be involved to make
That shot.
That shot worked.
Yeah, and I hope the Tulip Farm is still there and it should become like part of the Wicked World Tour.
I know,
how everyone goes to
Yeah.
see where they shot whatever Game of Thrones. They should go to that field so we can get some
I wonder
goodies.
if the Tulip Farm would like it or hate it.
I don't know. Let's see. We'll see what happens there. And also the cameras, you use some Panatar lenses, I believe, right?
Yep. So we used something called Ultra Panatar 2s, and we did have some original Ultra Panatars that the second unit used, but we had 2 full sets of these new lenses called Ultra Panatar 2s, and they were prototype lenses. And I worked with Panavision, Dan Suzuki there to develop them and really create our own Wicked recipe for the movie with these lenses. And he was my first call when I got Wicked. And so that lens story is a very long journey to, and even when we started shooting, we didn't have all our lenses, but they very rapidly came in as we started shooting.
Yeah. And you would choose, it seems like, different lenses for Glinda and Elphaba, right? Like the way you framed them, and it was really beautiful.
Yeah, it was a happy find while we were doing camera tests. We had about 18 weeks of prep on the ground in London, and a lot of that was we camera test every week for not just my department, but we needed costumes, needed information, set deck needed information, art department, makeup. So we do all these tests, including lighting tests. And on one of the makeup tests we did, we found that like Cynthia Erivo's lens was the 65 millimeter lens. But then when we put it on Ari, it just didn't work. And then we tried the 75 mil and it was just magic on Ari. Yeah. And so it's the magic of cameras and lighting and cinema. Is like different things mixed together make a certain recipe. And the 75 was like, she just shined on that lens. And I don't know why, and some of it's just instinct or intuition, trust your instincts. And so that's what we did.
I love that. Okay, and then the last nerdy question I have. So Elfie's glasses in the beginning when she's a little girl. Reflections are always such a big thing. So how did you guys get such beautiful shots of the little girl? Did you AR it? What did you do? Was it frames
I mean, the glasses were a big challenge. You have your lead actor in glasses or a huge hat for the whole movie. So those were 2 things I really had to work with Paul Tazwell on. And the thing was, the glasses were the very last choice made. I think they actually were chosen the morning of. We had looked at different glasses. Yeah. And come down to 2 different ones throughout all these tests. And I believe it was the morning of. Maybe I might be remembering it wrong. It's funny because as we all are telling our stories of Wicked, we all have different versions of the story. And we're just like, we all remember it so differently. Yeah. But so I don't know for sure. But Paul and I both told this story. So it was the last minute decision. And I had asked Paul to get these glasses made with this lens that I know this glass maker in Sharon, Connecticut can, like, the most beautiful. They're the only lenses I've ever found that don't cause a color shift on the skin, and you can see through them, and I can light well, and they don't have reflections. But we got the glasses at the last minute, so that didn't happen. And then he had to go find. So for the first 2 days, we had a massive challenge until proper anti-reflective coating was put on.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Because there's some subtle reflections that are tracked. I don't know if that was done in camera or how it looked, but it just was really stunning.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so good job. Okay, so I want to talk back a little bit just about motherhood, because this is now a new topic I am very interested in since I've become a mother myself. I have a 6-month-old, and I was reading in one of your interviews, you were sharing how you were so scared to become a mother and to make this decision because of the impact, obviously, I'm sure, on career, but talk about the fear that you had, what that time was like for you. And I know that you made the decision not to share when you were pregnant. And a lot of women, even in 2024, myself included, grapple with this and feel the same fear, making sure people don't start making decisions on your behalf about your own limitations, so to speak, because of the fact that now you are pregnant or are a mother. So I just want to hear more about that transition for you.
Yeah, I have always had 2 dreams. I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to be a cinematographer. And so suddenly I'm 35 and finally in the union, making money shooting, or at least some money shooting. But I also am I need to have a baby. And so it's terrifying. And I didn't want to let that dream go. And so when I got pregnant, I chose not to tell anyone. And my mom said to me, if you carry the baby the way I did, no one's going to know till you're 7 months. And so I said, okay, we'll see what happens. And I got to 7 months, and I remember I called Jon, and I was terrified to call him and tell him I was pregnant. But suddenly one day I was very pregnant. And so I called him. I'm like, you're about to get an invitation to my baby shower, because my friend Carla and I, we were timing out when we were going to have the baby shower. So once I showed, I'm like, okay, we can have the baby shower. So I'm like, I called Jon. I'm like, so you're going to get an invitation to the baby shower. And he's like, oh, great. He's like, when are you having a baby? And I'm like, in 2 months. And he's like, but I just saw you last week. And I'm like, yep, I'm having a baby in 2 months.
Yep.
And he's like, how? And he was totally shocked. And now in retrospect, I'm just like, why didn't I tell him?
Yeah. And he has 5 kids.
But he didn't at the time. Like
yeah.
his first baby was born 2 years after my baby. So it's terrifying. And I even remember the feeling when I was shooting here and I had to get on a plane. Like you can't fly within a certain amount of weeks before you're due. And so we wrapped. And I had to get on the plane the next day, or the only other option was to take an Amtrak across the country. And I told my husband I wasn't getting on a train. But I remember walking out of my apartment here and just feeling this incredible sadness, because I thought I would never have my independence again, and that I was saying goodbye to my career in some ways. And it's really sad that I wish I could tell my younger self not to do that. And I wish I had babies sooner. I want more babies, and I have had 5 miscarriages, and I am so sad that I never got another baby. So I just wish I could tell my younger self not to be so scared and just to commit and not to hide it. And I think part of this whole journey has been finding my femininity in the whole process, because I used to pull my hair back and wear the baggiest clothes I possibly could because I just was trying to blend in. And the thing is, I didn't ever need to blend in. And it's probably my biggest regret.
Yeah. Do you find that now that you have become a mother, some of those fears and anxieties about losing your independence, and there's a reckoning with our own identities, right? As women, as professional women, like now knowing what you know, how has that shifted for you?
I walk around the world with my daughter. I bring her everywhere. I don't apologize for being a mom. She is part of my life. She goes practically everywhere with me. And she's one of the only kids on red carpets. And she can sit in a black tent watching us make movies, or sit on the sidelines observing, or be very involved in visual effects. Like all of this comes from the fact that I have gone, okay, I am a woman and this is the path that I want it to be. I want to have both. And so I'm grabbing it as hard as I can.
Yeah. You're defining your own, not gravity. I'm not going to say it. You're defining your own. No, you're like, it's the quote. It's the quote from Elphaba. Like you said, when we were walking around, from the song, the lyrics that now is escaping me, but it's
Just
beautiful.
my instincts, close my eyes and leap.
To play by your own rules,
Oh, yeah.
right? And to really like set the stage for, and it's sad to me too, as a woman who found my partner later in life, became a mom later in life when I was geriatric, how much fear we have about stepping into this identity that is actually quite liberating and expansive, like in ways that I was not prepared for. I have a 6-month-old and I felt the same anxieties. It's like I've been working towards this for almost 20 years. Like, and it's so much work and it takes so much. This industry is a lifestyle industry for many of us, especially if you live in LA, you can't really escape it. How do you have space for this other thing that is so important, and making that choice? But the amount of women that I've met, to your point of sisterhood and role models, not just in the professional lanes that we occupy, but as moms, as working moms, and the amount of women I've met because of the fact that I am now a woman in my industry, right, in our industry, has just really, it's been such like a warm hug and so embracing of this, that you get to be both. You don't have to choose. There are moments where you may have to be more of one than the other, and that's okay. And you can be managing this incredible world of Oz, or in the comfort of your bed reading with your daughter, and both of those worlds are just as exciting, that you can have both of those things. And so I share that because again, a lot of younger women listen to the show. And for anyone who is wanting to start a family and that is important to them, it's not as scary as you may think, and it is possible. And I think, obviously, if you go on a journey of solo parenting, that's also valid. But community is really what you need. And it can look in all kinds of different ways, whether you have a partner, you're married, or you have a tribe of people that are helping you, a tribe of women.
My daughter was 5 weeks old and I went back to work, and not because for any reason except like I wanted to keep working. And I remember even when I was pregnant with her, I kept saying to her, I'm like, okay, baby, you are going to have to be adventurous because we are going to go on a lot of adventures together. And I didn't know what that was going to look like at all. I didn't know what the future was going to bring. But my husband hates to travel, so she is my full travel companion. She wants to explore every single corner of the world. And just like the amount of joy it brings me to experience my career with her is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I have a feeling she's going to not resent you for this later on. She's going to have the most incredible life journey for her to just get to see you and your power in this way, and your ups and your downs, and all versions of you as a mom, as a woman, as a dreamer of what's possible. I just think that's incredible. So I can't wait to see who she becomes. I have one last question before the lightning round that we'll wrap up. And thinking about producers, in your opinion, what is it that makes a producer exceptional?
Mark Platt is the best producer I've ever worked with in my entire life. He's our producer on Wicked. He is a true storyteller, and he is in the trenches with all of us, and he loves story, and he loves movie making. And he stood next to me almost the entire year because I have the best monitors, and I could hear him get excited, and I could also hear him when he was worried. But he just was so committed to Jon and Jon's vision and all of us, and he'd go and fight for the things we needed. And he's just amazing. He's got 5 kids of his own, and he's got all these grandkids, and creates that family atmosphere on set among everyone, and is just so approachable and wonderful, and just such a huge heart.
So it's his heart. Is that what makes him an exceptional producer?
I think it's his heart.
Yeah.
And he's a filmmaker. He loves movies.
He loves movies. So heart and love. You don't hear that very often. People will say opposite things. Before we jump into the lightning round, which again are 5 quick questions just to take us out, thank you again for stopping by and sharing a little bit of your journey and your wisdom.
Thank you so much.
This is so fun. And like I said, I wish I could talk to you forever. But hopefully there'll be a part 2 when part 2 comes out.
Oh yeah, part 2 comes out.
Okay, so these are the lightning round questions. What is a song that teleports you to a happy place?
Take a Load Off Annie.
What's the latest piece of art that moved you? It could be a book, a movie, a film, or TV show, anything.
I saw the Luna exhibit when I was here, and I think it's in New York now. And yeah, Luna.
Fill in the blank. When I'm overworked, blank helps ease the stress.
Gratitude.
What is one of the most worthwhile investments you've ever made? And it doesn't have to be financial.
Moving across the country and leaving LA.
What's one failure you wouldn't be here without?
Not getting acting jobs after the age of 10.
Because you think you would have stayed acting if that had happened?
I just think I wouldn't have been an observer. And so I would have just been working and doing that. And then I wouldn't have stepped back and seen what I actually love.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much. I hope that, this experience of Wicked and this interview, certainly of all the press you've done, has helped you change for good. I had to get it in. I was like, let's see where we can get it in, where it goes. But again, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much.
Such a delight. I appreciate you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.